Now we're going to talk about tap firing. A big thing I see in a lot of players who start tap firing is they don't wait for the gun's recoil to reset when they're tap firing, so they're still placing inaccurate shots. So for example, if I take the Vandal, right, and I'm tap firing, if I wait for the recoil to reset, I'm going to be accurate on my crosshair every time. But if I'm tapping too fast, you see how it kind of goes up and I lose that control. I'd have to pull down. It's not so much more of a tap anymore at that point. It's better to kind of burst if I'm going to go for those quick shots. But we're going to talk about tapping in general. When to tap, at what ranges you want to tap, when it's probably the best idea to tap instead of spray and bursting as well. I always found it better, especially within like a long range battle. This is something that I see quite often, is people will be kind of far and they'll kind of commit to a spray, which isn't very necessary. If you take your time and you're always keeping your crosshair placement kind of in mind, and you're just tapping, it's a lot better to tap and kind of correct after the fact if you miss, versus spraying and then trying to tap it, especially at a longer range. So if I'm sitting like further over here, right, if I'm like missing, if I'm like counter strafing and I'm missing, it's better to just keep those taps kind of going and keeping that movement up. It's really important. But tapping is going to be kind of your go-to for any kind of long-range form of fight or anything like that. ADSing when you're tapping as well comes in handy a lot because it does give you that slight zoom, so you can be a little more accurate, and it actually slows down the rate of fire of the guns you're ADSing. So if you look at my spray when I'm spraying versus, I can get a lot better feel for spray as well with it like that, but we're going to focus on just the kind of tapping portion of this. So like I said, you want to make sure that any kind of long range fight or duel you're having with somebody, you want to go for taps and you don't want to commit to sprays. Something I've learned a lot as you get into higher ranks especially, and this will even trickle down into lower ranks, the person who kind of commits to a spray first usually ends up being the one that loses. If you take your time and just place your shots, especially in those long range fights, you're probably going to come out on top majority of the time. So it's really important to keep that in mind. For example, like the Guardian is a full tap gun, right? You can't spray this; it's a single shot weapon. But again, if I'm tapping too fast, it goes all over the place. So you just want to make sure you take time. Try it out for different guns and see what kind of the fire rate is and how fast you should tap on recoil reset for each gun, because it does vary a little bit. You get kind of the hang of it after handling the same weapon over and over or trying this out for a while. You'll get used to it and you won't have to think about it as much. But a good rule of thumb is after you tap, you can kind of see like your character's hand readjust. At that point is when you can tap again, because that's when the recoil resets again. So if I wait for that animation, I'm always going to be pretty accurate. It's always going to be 100%, as long as you're waiting for that recoil to reset. And that, again, goes for pretty much every gun. Even with a Stinger, if I'm just sitting and tapping, versus letting those couple extra shots go off, you see the difference it makes if I don't wait for that recoil to reset. Again, the Stinger's probably not a gun you really want to tap with unless you're going ADS, where you have this burst fire mode, which is kind of the go-to, especially in a long range. And if you're long range with a Stinger, it's probably better to get into a better position to be in a closer range for it. But if you are unlikely in that fight where you are long range, ADSing is going to be your go-to. You want to make sure you're getting those accurate shots in. You're not losing the fight because of recoil or because of the range. You're kind of just getting the best for what you paid for in this situation, right? Even so, like other single fire guns, like the Operator, obviously you can't spray the op. Same thing with the Marshall, you can't really spray the op, right? So it's better just to take your time and learn. Even with like pistols, the Ghost, this is something I see happen a lot, is people always want to commit to like just spraying the Ghost at people. If you took your time and kind of place your shots, just tapping it, it's going to work out a lot better for you. Same thing if you struggle with like the Sheriff. If you took your time, and this is going to be hard at first, but if you take your time and kind of place your shots, it's going to work out a lot better. Again, these are single shot guns, but it still comes into the sense of like tapping and knowing how to use it better. It'll probably make you better with those single fire guns. If you get used to tapping, especially in those long range fights, it just pans out a little bit better for you.